prologue, you entered before knowing the rules. Before you understood language, the game had already begun. Before you formed your first memory, pieces had already been placed around you. You did not choose the country into which you were born. You did not choose the century. You did not choose your parents, your family name, your body, your health, your social class, or the conditions waiting outside the room where you first opened your eyes. Some entered the world surrounded by protection. Before they could walk, their future had already been discussed. There was money for education. There were adults who understood institutions. There were books in the house, stable routines, useful connections, and people who knew how opportunity worked. Others entered the same world under completely different conditions. They were born into conflict, poverty, illness, instability, or abandonment. Before they could dream about the future, they had to learn how to survive the present. Some inherited property. Others inherited debt. Some inherited confidence. Others inherited fear. Some were taught that the world contained opportunities waiting to be explored. Others were taught that the world was dangerous, unfair, and ready to punish anyone who became too visible. None of them chose their opening position. Yet all of them would eventually be judged by where they finished. This is the first mystery of life. We speak as though everyone begins at the same starting line. We praise some people for running faster, without asking whether they began several kilometers ahead. We condemn others for moving slowly without examining the weight they were forced to carry. But life has never been one fair race. It is a collection of different games, played on unequal boards, under changing rules, with incomplete information and limited time. And most of us begin playing long before we understand what game we are in. A child does not know that the home is teaching them the first rules of reality. They simply observe. They watch what happens when someone makes a mistake. They watch whether adults apologize. They watch how money is discussed. They watch who is allowed to speak. They watch whether power protects the weak or humiliates them. They watch whether love is freely given or withdrawn as punishment. They watch whether conflict ends through conversation, silence, violence, or abandonment. From these moments, the child begins constructing an invisible rule book. They may learn that love must be earned, that weakness must be hidden, that asking for help leads to disappointment, that money always disappears, that authority must never be questioned, that success attracts enemies, that men should never show pain, that women should endure suffering quietly, that safety depends on pleasing everyone, that people cannot be trusted. These lessons are rarely written down. No teacher stands before the child and announces them. They enter quietly. They are absorbed through repetition. Eventually, they begin to feel less like lessons and more like reality itself. Years later, the child becomes an adult. They begin making decisions about work, money, love, family, and ambition. But the old rulebook remains active. The adult may call it personality. They may say, "This is simply who I am." But sometimes what we call personality is an old survival strategy that was never examined. The person who refuses help may once have learned that nobody came when help was requested. The person who controls everyone may once have lived in chaos. The person who cannot rest may have received affection only after achievement. The person who avoids intimacy may have learned that vulnerability creates pain. The person who seeks constant approval may still be trying to earn the security that childhood never provided. The body becomes older, the environment changes, but the old rules continue directing the moves. This is how a person can spend decades reacting to a past that no longer exists. They believe they are choosing freely, but fear is choosing. Pride is choosing. The need for approval is choosing. An old humiliation is choosing. A family expectation is choosing. A cultural script is choosing. And because the force remains invisible, the person mistakes reaction for destiny. But family is only the first player. Soon, the wider world enters. School introduces another scoreboard. Marks, rank, discipline, approval, competition. The child learns that some abilities are rewarded while others remain unseen. The workplace introduces another game. Performance, status, visibility, politics. Obedience, negotiation. The market introduces another. Value, scarcity, trust, demand, leverage. Relationships introduce another. Love, attachment, sacrifice, boundaries, loyalty, power. Society adds more scoreboards. Money, beauty, marriage, property, followers, titles, influence, recognition. Everywhere the person is told what winning should look like. But they are rarely taught to ask who created the scoreboard. They are taught how to compete before they are taught how to choose the competition. They are told to become successful before defining what success means. They are told to climb without asking where the ladder leads. And so many people spend their lives trying to win games they never consciously selected. A man may spend 40 years trying to prove that he is richer than people he dislikes. If he succeeds, he may believe he has defeated them. But if they selected the purpose of his life, who truly won? A woman may choose her career, appearance, and relationships according to how others will judge her. She may receive admiration. But if the audience designed the life, who is really living it? A leader may become obsessed with remaining in power. He may silence rivals, punish criticism, and weaken every institution that could remove him. He may win every political battle and still destroy the country that made the position meaningful. A parent may sacrifice everything to give children a better life, only to become so consumed by providing that the children rarely experience their presence. A worker may climb through every level of an organization and eventually discover that achievement made them successful everywhere, except inside their own home. These are not simple failures. They are false victories. They occur when the player succeeds according to one scoreboard while losing everything the scoreboard failed to measure: health, peace, integrity, love, freedom, meaning, time. This is why the first question in the game of life is not, how do I win? The first question is, what game am I playing? Is this a game of survival, a game of status, a game of money, a game of revenge, a game of belonging, a game of love, a game of proving something, a game of escaping shame, a game of building something that will outlive you? The answer matters because a strategy that succeeds in one game may destroy another. Aggression may help someone survive a dangerous environment. The same aggression may later destroy a peaceful relationship. Suspicion may protect a child in an unstable home. The same suspicion may prevent the adult from trusting anyone. Relentless work may help a person escape poverty. The same hunger may make them incapable of enjoying security after it has been achieved. The strategy that saves you at one stage can imprison you at the next. This is why life requires more than hard work. It requires awareness. You must know the position. You must know the players. You must know the rules. You must know which rules are real, which are inherited, and which were created by someone who benefits from your obedience. You must know what you are trying to win, and you must understand what the victory will cost before the price arrives. But even awareness does not create complete control. There are forces no player can command. Luck remains part of the game. A chance meeting can change a career. An illness can interrupt a plan. A war can destroy what took generations to build. An economic collapse can punish people who made reasonable decisions. A person can prepare carefully and still lose. Another can behave recklessly and temporarily succeed. This is uncomfortable because human beings prefer moral explanations. We want success to prove virtue. We want suffering to prove error. We want the world to reward the good and punish the dishonest immediately. But life does not operate as a perfect moral scoreboard. Good people can suffer. Dishonest people can prosper. Wise decisions can produce painful outcomes. Foolish decisions can sometimes be protected by luck. Yet this does not make character meaningless. Character determines how a person uses success. It determines how they respond to failure. It determines whether power becomes service or domination, whether money becomes freedom or display, whether pain becomes wisdom or cruelty, whether another person's weakness becomes an opportunity to help or an opportunity to exploit. We do not control every outcome, but we participate in becoming the person who meets the outcome. That is where Florence Scovel Shinn's original idea becomes important. In 1925, she described life as a game governed by spiritual principles. She wrote about the power of words, faith, expectation, love, forgiveness, and non-resistance. She believed that people often participate in creating the patterns that return to them. Her language was spiritual, but beneath it was a lasting human insight. What we repeatedly speak, expect, and imagine can influence how we move through the world. A person who constantly declares defeat may stop noticing opportunity. A person who expects betrayal may behave in ways that make trust impossible. A person convinced that nothing can change may never attempt the actions through which change becomes possible. Words do not command every event. Thoughts do not remove injustice. Faith does not replace preparation. But the inner world still matters because it helps shape the player. And the player carries that inner world into every decision, into work, into money, into love, into conflict, into opportunity, into loss. The game is therefore played on two boards at once. There is the external board, the world of institutions, markets, family, politics, relationships, luck and power. And there is the internal board, the world of fear, identity, attention, belief, habit, desire, and self-deception. A person may improve the external position and remain defeated internally. They may become wealthy while remaining controlled by the fear of poverty. They may become admired while still believing they are worthless. They may leave a destructive relationship and carry the same unhealed pattern into the next one. They may defeat an enemy and remain emotionally organized around the injury. They may obtain freedom and discover that they never learned how to direct themselves. This is why the deepest game is not against the world alone. It is also against unconsciousness, against the forces inside us that act before thought, against the habits that make tomorrow resemble yesterday, against the emotions that demand permanent decisions during temporary storms, against the ego that would rather protect an image than accept the truth, against the fear that calls surrender realism, against the desire that makes us easy to control. The most dangerous player is not always the strongest enemy outside you. Sometimes it is the unexamined part of you making moves in the dark. But this documentary is not an argument for endless suspicion. Life is not only a battlefield. Other people are not merely rivals. Relationships are not only negotiations. The world also contains cooperation, friendship, love, creativity, generosity, humor, beauty, and service. The game is worth playing not only because there are victories to collect, but because there are experiences that make victory meaningful. A meal shared with people you love. A child becoming stronger because you were present. A problem solved through patient work. A skill developed over years. A friend who remains when there is nothing to gain. A moment of forgiveness that frees the future without denying the past. A life improved because your work existed. A person helped to stand because you had once learned how to stand yourself. These things may never appear on the public scoreboard, but they are part of the final score. The game of life is therefore not about defeating everyone. It is not about controlling every event. It is not about becoming so guarded that nobody can hurt you. It is not about collecting the most money, attention, or power before time expires. It is about learning to distinguish what matters from what merely shines. It is about becoming strong without becoming cruel, open without becoming naive, ambitious without becoming empty, disciplined without becoming inhuman, forgiving without abandoning judgment, independent without rejecting love, successful without becoming a prisoner of success. And because time is limited, the question cannot be postponed forever. Every day is already a move. Every habit is already a vote. Every repeated compromise is already shaping the player. Every relationship is already influencing the board. Every hour of attention is already being invested somewhere. Doing nothing is also a move. Remaining silent is a move. Waiting is a move. Walking away is a move. Forgiving is a move. Refusing access is a move. Beginning again is a move. You may not know how many moves remain. Nobody does. You may not control the economy, the past, public opinion, another person's loyalty, or the final result of every effort. But the next move still contains responsibility. You can examine the rules you inherited. You can decide which ones deserve to remain. You can become conscious of the forces that once controlled you invisibly. You can build skill, protect attention, choose allies carefully, create value, strengthen the body, use money to create freedom rather than display, take risks without gambling the entire life. Leave games whose only purpose is to consume you, and before accepting any victory, you can ask what the pursuit is making of you. Because the final tragedy would not be that you failed to win every game. No human being can. The final tragedy would be spending the only life you have chasing a scoreboard you never examined, serving rules you never chose, and becoming someone you cannot respect in order to impress people who were never qualified to define you. You entered before knowing the rules, but you do not have to remain unconscious of them. The board may be unequal, the information may be incomplete, luck may interfere, other players may deceive you, and some losses may arrive despite your best decisions. Still, awareness changes the game. Once you recognize the pattern, it is no longer completely invisible. Once you question the rule, it is no longer automatically sacred. Once you define victory for yourself, the crowd loses some of its power. Once you govern the inner player, the world finds fewer emotional buttons through which to command your next move. You did not choose the opening position, but the next move is waiting. The question is whether it will be made by fear, habit, pride, and inherited expectation, or whether, perhaps for the first time, it will truly be made by you. Chapter 1: The Starting Position. The game begins before you arrive. Every human being enters the greatest game ever played without choosing the opening position. Before you make your first decision, many decisions have already been made for you. The country where you are born, the family you enter, the language you speak, the education available to you, the culture that shapes your beliefs, the opportunities placed in front of you, the limitations placed around you. Nobody begins from the same square on the board. Some people are born several moves ahead. Others begin in positions where survival itself requires extraordinary effort. Some inherit knowledge, some inherit wealth, some inherit trauma, some inherit connections, some inherit obstacles that they did not create. This is one of the first uncomfortable truths about life. The game does not begin equally. Yet many people spend their entire lives fighting a battle against a reality that cannot be changed. They ask, why was I not given the same opportunities? Why did someone else receive advantages I never had? Why is their journey easier? These questions may be understandable. Sometimes they are necessary, because understanding the starting position matters. A person who does not understand where they began cannot understand where they need to go. But there is another danger. The starting position can become an excuse to stop playing. The person begins believing, my beginning is my destiny, my past has already decided my future, my circumstances are stronger than my choices, and slowly, the opening position becomes a permanent prison. The difference between a victim and a player is not whether they experienced difficulty. Many great people experienced enormous difficulty. The difference is what they do after recognizing the difficulty. The victim asks, why was I given this position? The player asks, given this position, what is my next move? The illusion of the self-made person. Modern society celebrates the idea of the self-made individual, the entrepreneur who built an empire, the athlete who became a legend, the leader who changed history, the person who rose from nothing. These stories inspire us, but they are often incomplete. No human being is completely self-made. Every person stands on foundations created by others. The language you use was created before you. The knowledge you possess was built by previous generations. The roads you travel, the schools you attend, the technology you use, the ideas you inherit, the opportunities you discover. All of these exist because countless people contributed before you arrived. The philosopher Aristotle understood that human beings are not isolated creatures. He described humans as social animals. A person develops through relationships, communities, and institutions. The individual matters, but the individual is always connected to something larger. This does not reduce achievement. It makes achievement more remarkable. A great player does not create the entire board. A great player understands the board better than others and makes better moves. The first lesson: accept reality before you can change it. One of the greatest mistakes people make is fighting reality instead of understanding it. They want life to begin from a different position. But the game does not allow a restart. You cannot choose your parents after birth. You cannot change the decade you entered. You cannot erase every disadvantage. You cannot recover every lost opportunity. But you can decide what happens next. This was one of the central ideas of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus was born into slavery. He began life without political power, wealth, or freedom. Yet he became one of history's most influential philosophers. His message was built around a simple distinction. Some things are within your control, some things are not. Your birthplace, not within your control. Your past, not within your control. Other people's opinions, not fully within your control. Your effort, your discipline, your response, your preparation, those belong to you. The person who spends all their energy fighting what cannot be changed loses energy needed for what can be changed. The wise player does not deny reality. They study it. Case Study 1. Oprah Winfrey. Changing the position. Few examples demonstrate this better than Oprah Winfrey. Her early life did not resemble the image of future success. She was born into poverty and experienced a difficult childhood. The starting position was not favorable. By many traditional measurements, the odds were against her. But one important factor changed everything. She developed abilities that increased her value: communication, storytelling, emotional intelligence, connection with people. She transformed personal difficulty into understanding of human experience. Her past became part of her strength. The same experiences that could have destroyed her became the foundation for connecting with millions of people. The lesson is not that suffering automatically creates success. Many people suffer and never receive the opportunities or support needed to recover. The deeper lesson is, your past influences you, but it does not have to completely define you. The player must understand their history without becoming trapped by it. Case Study 2. Cristiano Ronaldo. Talent is only the starting position. Another powerful example is Cristiano Ronaldo. Many people see greatness and assume it began with talent. But talent alone rarely creates exceptional results. Thousands of people possess ability. Few transform ability into mastery. Ronaldo's career demonstrates another principle. A favorable starting position is not enough. It must be developed. His discipline, physical preparation, and commitment to improvement became part of his advantage. The difference between potential and achievement is often the habits built after potential is discovered. A person may begin with intelligence but never develop knowledge. A person may begin with talent but never develop discipline. A person may begin with opportunity but never develop responsibility. The opening position matters, but the moves afterward matter more. Case Study 3. Nelson Mandela. When the player changes the board, some people do not only change their own position, they change the entire game. Nelson Mandela represents this level of transformation. He entered a system designed to limit millions of people. He spent decades fighting against apartheid and endured imprisonment. Many people would have allowed suffering to produce only anger and revenge. But Mandela understood something strategic. Winning the future required more than defeating an enemy. It required building a society where former opponents could exist together. His greatest move was not only resistance, it was transformation. He changed from a person fighting within the system to a leader helping redesign the system. The lesson: some players are not satisfied with surviving the board. They improve the board for those who come after them. The psychology of starting behind creates psychological challenges. The person may develop 1. Resentment. They focus so much on what others receive that they fail to use what they possess. Comparison becomes a prison. 2. Learned helplessness. Psychologist Martin Seligman studied how repeated exposure to uncontrollable negative events can make people stop trying, even when opportunities later appear. The danger is not only suffering, the danger is learning from suffering that effort is pointless. 3. Identity limitation. A person begins saying, "This is just who I am poor, I am unlucky, I am not educated, I am not talented." The circumstance becomes an identity. But circumstances are conditions. They are not the complete definition of a human being. The danger of privilege. Understanding disadvantage does not mean ignoring advantage. Some people begin with extraordinary benefits: wealth, education, networks, stability, connections. These advantages are real, but privilege creates its own dangers. A person who receives everything easily may never develop resilience. They may mistake inherited advantage for personal superiority. They may never learn patience, discipline, failure recovery, humility. A strong starting position can become a weakness if it prevents growth. A person born with every advantage still has to play. Money can buy opportunities, it cannot buy character. A powerful family name can open doors, it cannot guarantee wisdom. A good education can create knowledge, it cannot replace courage. Every player has weaknesses created by their position. The poor person may struggle with limited resources. The wealthy person may struggle with entitlement. The outsider may struggle with exclusion. The insider may struggle with complacency. Every position has challenges. The goal is understanding yours. Carl Jung and the unconscious starting position. The starting position is not only external, it is also internal. Carl Jung argued that much of human behavior is influenced by unconscious forces. People carry childhood experiences, fears, beliefs, emotional patterns. A person may believe they are making free choices while repeating patterns created decades earlier. Someone abandoned as a child may fear intimacy. Someone constantly criticized may avoid challenges. Someone raised around conflict may confuse chaos with normal life. The first step toward changing the game is becoming aware of the hidden rules inside yourself. As Jung famously expressed, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it directs life and people call it fate. The player must examine both the external board and the internal player. The first rule of the game before strategy comes acceptance, not acceptance as surrender, acceptance as accurate understanding. A chess player does not complain that the pieces are arranged differently from yesterday. They examine the position, they identify strengths, they identify weaknesses, they calculate possibilities. Then they move. Life requires the same discipline. You may not have chosen your beginning, your circumstances, your inherited challenges, but you are responsible for the moves available to you now. The question is not, why did I start here? The question is, now that I am here, what can I build? Because the greatest players in history were not always those who received the best opening position. They were those who understood their position better than anyone else. They learned the rules, they developed their abilities, they adapted, they moved, and eventually, they changed the game itself. The first move in the game of life is not winning, it is seeing the board clearly. Chapter 2: The Hidden Rules. Understanding the game you are actually playing. A person can be intelligent, hardworking, disciplined, ambitious, and still lose. Why? Because effort alone does not determine outcomes. Effort matters, but effort without understanding can become wasted energy. A person can spend years climbing a ladder, only to discover that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. This is one of the greatest lessons in the game of life. Before you play harder, understand the game you are playing. Every game has rules. Chess has rules. Football has rules. Business has rules. Politics has rules. Relationships have rules. Even though many of these rules are not written down, they still influence outcomes. The player who understands them has an advantage. The player who ignores them may work harder while moving in the wrong direction. The difference between effort and strategy. Many people are taught a simple formula: work hard, succeed. This idea contains truth. Hard work separates many successful people from those who never develop their abilities. But history shows that effort alone is not enough. A farmer can work harder than anyone else and still fail if they plant the wrong crop in the wrong environment. A business owner can work 80 hours a week and still fail if nobody wants the product. A talented employee can work harder than everyone else and remain invisible if they do not understand communication, relationships, and organizational dynamics. The problem is not always effort. Sometimes it is understanding. The world does not only reward how much energy you spend, it rewards where and how you spend it. This is the difference between activity and strategy. Activity asks, what am I doing? Strategy asks, why am I doing it? The invisible rules of value. One of the most important hidden rules is this: the world rewards value, not effort alone. This can feel unfair. A person may work extremely hard but receive little reward. Another person may appear to work less but receive much more. Why? Because the market does not directly measure sacrifice, it measures usefulness. The person who solves a bigger problem usually receives a bigger reward. The engineer who designs a system used by millions creates enormous value. The entrepreneur who creates a product people desperately need creates value. The doctor who develops a treatment that saves lives creates value. The artist who connects emotionally with millions creates value. Effort is important, but effort becomes powerful when connected to value creation. This is why two people can work equally hard and receive different outcomes. They are not always playing the same game. Understanding scarcity. One of the oldest principles in economics is scarcity. Things become valuable when they are limited and desired. Gold is valuable because it is rare. A highly skilled surgeon is valuable because expertise takes years to develop and cannot be easily replaced. A trusted reputation is valuable because it takes time to build and can disappear quickly. A unique skill combination is valuable because few people possess it. The player who understands scarcity understands that becoming valuable requires becoming difficult to replace. This is why developing rare skills matters. A person with average skills competing in a crowded field faces enormous pressure. A person who combines several valuable abilities creates uniqueness. For example, a person who understands engineering alone may be useful. A person who understands engineering, programming, statistics, and communication becomes much harder to replace. The combination creates advantage. Warren Buffett. Understanding the game before playing. Few people demonstrate this principle better than Warren Buffett. Many people look at Buffett and see wealth, but wealth was the result of something deeper. Understanding. Buffett did not become successful simply because he worked harder than every other investor. He understood the rules of the investment game. He focused on patience, long-term thinking, buying quality, avoiding unnecessary risk, understanding businesses. He often emphasized staying within one circle of competence, meaning, know what you understand, know what you do not understand. Many people lose money because they enter games they do not understand. They chase trends, follow excitement, copy others. They are not investing, they are gambling. The lesson is bigger than finance. Before entering any game, understand what creates success here, what creates failure, who benefits, what skills matter, what mistakes are common. The difference between appearance and reality. One of the most dangerous mistakes is confusing visible success with real success. The world often rewards appearances. A person may appear wealthy because of expensive clothing, luxury possessions, public image, but appearances can hide weakness. Another person may appear ordinary while quietly building skills, savings, knowledge, relationships, reputation. The first person may win attention, the second person may win the future. This is why understanding hidden rules matters. The scoreboard people see is not always the scoreboard that determines long-term outcomes. Robert Greene in Power Dynamics, the social game, has hidden rules too. Robert Greene has written extensively about human behavior, influence, and power. One of his major themes is that people often underestimate the importance of understanding human nature. People are not guided only by logic. They are influenced by emotions, ego, fear, ambition, insecurity, status. A person may believe, if I work hard, everyone will notice. Sometimes they will, sometimes they will not. Because organizations are human systems, visibility matters, relationships matter, communication matters, reputation matters. This does not mean becoming fake. It means understanding that competence alone does not automatically communicate itself. A brilliant person who cannot communicate may be ignored. A talented person who cannot build relationships may remain isolated. A good idea without influence may never spread. The hidden rule. Value must be delivered, but value must also be understood by others. The game of reputation. One of the most powerful hidden currencies in life is reputation. Money can be earned again. Skills can be developed, but reputation takes years to build and moments to destroy. A person's reputation affects opportunities, relationships, trust, influence. People often say, I don't care what others think. There is wisdom in not becoming controlled by opinions, but completely ignoring reputation is a mistake. Human beings operate through trust. A person with a trustworthy reputation receives opportunities because others are willing to take risks with them. A person with a damaged reputation faces resistance because others become cautious. This is why every action sends a signal. How you treat people, how you handle mistakes, whether you keep promises, whether you accept responsibility, small actions compound. Reputation is built quietly before it is tested publicly. The psychology of following the wrong game. Many people are not failing because they are incapable. They are failing because they accepted someone else's definition of winning. Society may tell someone, success means a certain job. Success means wealth. Success means popularity. Success means status. But these goals may not match the person's values. A person spends 20 years chasing a title they never truly wanted. Another destroys their health chasing income they never enjoy. Another sacrifices relationships to impress people they barely know. They are winning according to an external scoreboard while losing according to their internal one. The philosopher Socrates warned about the danger of an unexamined life. The person must ask, why am I pursuing this? Who decided this matters? Would I still choose this if nobody saw it? The hidden rule. Do not spend your life winning a game you never chose. The role of incentives. Human behavior is shaped by incentives. People respond to what is rewarded. This principle applies everywhere. A company rewards only short-term results. Employees focus on short-term results. A school rewards memorization. Students memorize. A family rewards excuses. Members avoid responsibility. A society rewards attention. People create things designed to attract attention. The economist Adam Smith understood that incentives influence behavior. People respond to their environment. Therefore, wise players do not only ask, "Do people say?" They ask, "What behavior does this system reward?" The real rules are revealed by consequences. Changing games, one of the greatest skills in life, is knowing when the game has changed. A strategy that worked yesterday may fail tomorrow. Industries change. Technology changes. People change. Markets change. The person who refuses to adapt becomes trapped by old success. The company that dominates one era may disappear in another. The worker who stops learning may become replaceable. The leader who refuses criticism may lose touch with reality. Adaptation requires humility. The player must be willing to say, "What worked before may not work now." The hidden rule of learning. The best players remain students. They understand that knowledge creates advantage. They study history, psychology, economics, human behavior. They learn from mistakes. They learn from others. They learn from failure. A person who stops learning begins declining, even if they do not notice immediately. The world continues moving. Standing still is often moving backward. The first strategic question before making your next major move: ask, what game am I actually playing? Am I trying to build wealth, influence, freedom, family, mastery, service, recognition? Are my actions aligned with that goal? Do I understand the rules? Do I understand the risks? Do I understand what creates value? Because the greatest mistake is not losing after playing correctly. The greatest mistake is spending decades becoming excellent at the wrong game. The world does not only reward players, it rewards players who understand the board. The person who sees the hidden rules gains an advantage. But even knowledge of the game is not enough. A person can understand the rules and still be defeated by the hardest opponent they will ever face: themselves. That is where the next chapter begins. Chapter 3: The First Battlefield. Mastering yourself. Before a person can conquer the external world, they must first confront the world within. The greatest battles are often not fought in boardrooms, battlefields, or public arenas. They are fought silently, inside the human mind. Every day, a person faces invisible opponents: fear, anger, laziness, ego, distraction, impulse, insecurity, the desire for approval, the need to prove oneself. These forces influence decisions long before the outside world sees the result. A person may blame circumstances, the economy, other people, bad luck, the system. Sometimes those things are real, but many people are defeated not because the world was too powerful. They are defeated because they never learned to command themselves. The first opponent in the game of life is not another person. It is the uncontrolled self. The battle within. Ancient philosophers understood something modern society often forgets. A person who cannot govern themselves will eventually be governed by something else: their emotions, their desires, other people's opinions, social pressure, fear, pleasure. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato described the human soul as a struggle between different forces. Reason must guide desire. Otherwise, the person becomes like a ship without a captain. The ship may have power, it may have resources, but without direction, it eventually crashes. Modern life has created more freedom than previous generations, but freedom without self-control creates new dangers. A person can access unlimited information, but waste years consuming entertainment. A person can communicate instantly, but destroy relationships through careless words. A person can earn money, but destroy themselves through uncontrolled spending. The problem is not lack of opportunity. The problem is lack of mastery. Carl Jung. Meeting the shadow. One of the deepest thinkers on the human mind was Carl Jung. Jung argued that human beings contain parts of themselves they do not fully understand. The parts we accept become our conscious identity. The parts we reject often become the shadow. The shadow contains hidden fears, suppressed desires, anger, jealousy, insecurity, weaknesses we refuse to admit. Many people spend their lives fighting external enemies while ignoring the enemy within. A person may hate arrogance in others while refusing to see their own pride. A person may criticize dishonesty while lying to themselves. A person may complain about toxic people while repeating toxic behavior. Jung's warning was powerful. until a person becomes aware of their unconscious patterns. Those patterns influence their decisions. The person believes, this is just my personality, but sometimes it is an unresolved wound. The person says, I always choose the wrong partners, I always lose opportunities, I always sabotage myself. The question becomes, is this fate? Or is this a pattern that has never been examined? Self-deception. The enemy nobody wants to fight. One of the hardest battles is admitting that we may be part of our own problem. Human beings are naturally skilled at creating explanations that protect their ego. When we succeed, I was talented. When we fail, the circumstances were impossible. Sometimes those statements are true, but sometimes they protect us from uncomfortable lessons. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman studied the ways human thinking creates predictable errors. The human mind does not always seek truth. It often seeks comfort, speed, and consistency. We remember information that supports our beliefs. We ignore information that challenges our identity. We judge ourselves by intentions and others by actions. We create stories where we are the hero. This is why self-awareness is difficult. The mind that must be examined is the same mind doing the examination. The player must become both the person playing and the person studying the player. Ego. The invisible enemy of growth. Ego is one of the most dangerous opponents because it often disguises itself as strength. Confidence says, I can improve. Ego says, I already know enough. Confidence accepts correction. Ego sees correction as an attack. Confidence seeks truth. Ego seeks victory. A person controlled by ego becomes difficult to teach. They cannot admit mistakes. They cannot apologize. They cannot learn from people below them. They protect their image more than their growth. History is full of talented people destroyed by ego. They achieved success. Then they became prisoners of their previous success. They stopped listening, stopped adapting, stopped learning. Their greatest achievement became their greatest weakness. The story of Kodak. When success creates blindness, a powerful example is Kodak. Kodak was once one of the most successful photography companies in the world. Ironically, Kodak engineers helped develop early digital camera technology. The problem was not lack of intelligence. The problem was attachment to the existing game. Their success was built around film. Digital photography threatened the business model that made them powerful. The company understood the technology, but understanding is not the same as accepting. They struggled to abandon the old system. The lesson: sometimes the thing that made you successful can prevent you from becoming successful again. The player must constantly ask, am I protecting what works, or protecting what I am emotionally attached to? Discipline. The bridge between intention and achievement. Many people know what they want. Few consistently do what is required. The gap between desire and achievement is discipline. Discipline is not punishment. It is delayed gratification. The ability to choose a greater future over a smaller present reward. The person who studies instead of endlessly entertaining themselves. The person who saves instead of spending everything. The person who trains while others relax. The person who controls their words when anger demands expression. Discipline creates freedom because it increases options. A person without discipline becomes controlled by immediate desires. A person with discipline gains control over their future. The marshmallow test. The power of delayed gratification. Psychologist Walter Mischel studied delayed gratification through the famous marshmallow experiments. Children were offered a choice: receive a smaller reward immediately, or wait and receive a larger reward later. The experiment became famous because it explored the relationship between self-control and future outcomes. The broader lesson is not that one childhood test determines destiny. Human lives are more complicated. Environment matters, resources matter, support matters. But the principle remains valuable. The ability to delay immediate satisfaction often creates long-term advantage. The person who cannot control today is often controlled by tomorrow's consequences. The addiction to comfort. One of the greatest dangers of modern life is excessive comfort. Comfort itself is not the enemy. Rest is necessary. Peace is valuable. The problem begins when comfort becomes the highest priority. A person avoids every difficult conversation, avoids every risk, avoids every challenge. Slowly, their world becomes smaller. They protect themselves from discomfort until they also protect themselves from growth. Growth requires resistance. Muscles grow through resistance. Skills grow through difficulty. Character grows through challenges. A life without difficulty may feel safe, but safety without development creates weakness. The Stoic lesson: control what you can. The Stoics understood that the person who tries to control everything becomes anxious. They divided reality into two categories: things within our control, things outside our control. Marcus Aurelius faced war, political betrayal, illness, and personal loss. He understood that power does not remove human vulnerability. Even an emperor cannot command everything. The Stoic question was, what response belongs to me you cannot control? Other people's opinions, the past, every outcome, unexpected events. But you can control your preparation, your effort, your attitude, your principles. This is not passive acceptance, it is strategic focus. A soldier does not waste ammunition shooting at the weather. A player does not waste energy fighting the impossible. They focus on the moves available. Emotional mastery: mastering yourself does not mean eliminating emotions. Emotions are information. Fear can reveal danger. Anger can reveal injustice. Sadness can reveal loss. Excitement can reveal opportunity. The problem occurs when emotion becomes the decision maker. An angry person says something permanent because of a temporary feeling. A fearful person rejects an opportunity because of imagined failure. A jealous person destroys a relationship because they cannot control insecurity. The mature person learns to create space between feeling and action. The emotion arrives, the person observes, then chooses. That space is freedom. The strongest person in the room. The strongest person is not always the loudest. Not the person who intimidates others, not the person who always wins arguments. Often the strongest person is the one who can control themselves when they have every reason not to. The person who has power but does not abuse it. The person who has anger but chooses wisdom. The person who has wealth but remains humble. The person who has suffered but refuses to become cruel. Self-control is invisible power. The daily game self-mastery is not achieved in one dramatic moment. It is built through daily choices. Every morning, the player makes moves. What information enters the mind? What habits are repeated? What people receive access? What excuses are accepted? What standards are maintained? The small choices appear insignificant, but they compound. A person does not suddenly become disciplined. They practice discipline. A person does not suddenly become wise. They practice reflection. A person does not suddenly become courageous. They repeatedly act despite fear. Character is not something discovered, it is something constructed. The first victory before winning external battles, win internal ones. Before building wealth, build discipline. Before gaining influence, gain self-control. Before leading others, learn to lead yourself. The person who cannot command their own attention will struggle to achieve meaningful goals. The person who cannot control impulses will struggle to protect success. The person who cannot face themselves will always run from something. The first victory is not over the world, it is over the chaos within. Because the greatest player is not the person who controls everyone else. It is the person who has learned to control themselves. And once a person begins mastering themselves, they face the next challenge, the people around them, because life is not played alone. Every move happens among other players. Some become allies. Some become opponents. Some lift you higher. Some pull you lower. The next chapter explores the most complicated game of all. Chapter 4, the people game. Allies, enemies, and human nature. No person plays the game of life alone. Even the most independent person depends on others. The food we eat, the knowledge we use, the roads we travel, the technology we rely on, the opportunities we receive. Almost everything that allows human progress exists because people cooperate. But the same human relationships that create our greatest advantages can also create our greatest dangers. People can become supporters, mentors, partners, teachers, competitors, manipulators, enemies. The person who understands human nature gains a major advantage. The person who misunderstands people can lose opportunities, relationships, and even their future. The game of life is not only about what you know, it is also about who you trust, who trusts you, and how you interact with others. The myth of complete independence. Modern culture often celebrates the individual, the person who needs nobody, the person who builds alone, the person who depends only on themselves. Self-reliance is valuable. A person should develop skills, confidence, and independence. But complete independence is an illusion. Every successful person has invisible support behind them. The entrepreneur has employees, customers, teachers, and investors. The athlete has coaches, teammates, and medical staff. The scientist builds on previous discoveries. The leader depends on people who execute the vision. The strongest people are not those who need nobody. They are those who understand how to build strong relationships without becoming dependent. This is a difficult balance. Weak people expect others to carry them. Wise people know how to cooperate. Aristotle. Humans are social creatures. The ancient philosopher Aristotle argued that humans are naturally social beings. He believed that a person cannot achieve a complete life in isolation. Human excellence develops through interaction with others. A person's character is revealed through relationships. Patience is tested by difficult people. Generosity is tested when resources are limited. Honesty is tested when deception creates advantage. Courage is tested when standing alone becomes necessary. We discover ourselves through other people. Relationships are not merely places where life happens. They are environments that shape who we become. The people around you are part of your environment. One of the most overlooked truths in life is that people influence behavior. The environment around you silently teaches you what is normal. A person surrounded by ambition is more likely to think ambitiously. A person surrounded by excuses may begin accepting excuses. A person surrounded by dishonesty may begin seeing dishonesty as normal. A person surrounded by discipline may gradually develop discipline. This does not mean you are powerless. It means influence is real. The people closest to you affect your standards, your beliefs, your habits, your expectations. This is why choosing relationships is one of the most important decisions a person makes. You are not only choosing friends, you are choosing an environment. The power of mentors. Many great players improve because someone helped them see a better path. A mentor provides knowledge, perspective, correction, experience. A young person may see only the immediate problem. A mentor sees patterns. They have already experienced mistakes the younger person is about to make. This is why history is filled with examples of mentorship. Alexander the Great was taught by Aristotle. The relationship between teacher and student influenced one of history's most famous leaders. The lesson is not that every mentor creates greatness. It is that access to better knowledge changes possibilities. A person who refuses to learn from others forces themselves to make every mistake personally. Wisdom is the ability to learn from experiences you did not have to suffer yourself. Sun Tzu, understanding human behavior. The ancient military strategist, Sun Tzu understood that victory was not only about strength, it was about understanding. Understanding yourself, understanding your opponent, understanding the environment. The same principle applies outside warfare, in business, politics, negotiation, relationships. The person who understands human motivation has an advantage. People are influenced by fear, pride, ambition, insecurity, belonging, recognition. A person who ignores these forces may be surprised by behavior that was predictable. The danger of naivety. Trust is necessary, but blind trust is dangerous. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming everyone thinks like they do. A person who values honesty may assume others value honesty equally. A loyal person may assume others are loyal. A generous person may assume others are grateful. But human beings have different incentives, different values, different experiences, different levels of self-control. This does not mean becoming paranoid. It means becoming aware. Wisdom requires balancing two mistakes. The first mistake, trusting everyone. This exposes a person to manipulation. The second mistake, trusting nobody. This creates isolation. The mature player learns trust should be earned, not automatically given. Robert Greene. The reality of human nature. Robert Greene has explored human behavior, power, and social dynamics extensively. One of his central ideas is that people often hide their true motivations. A person may speak about principles while pursuing personal advantage. A person may appear supportive while secretly competing. A person may offer friendship while seeking access. The lesson is not that everyone is dishonest. The lesson is that appearances are not always reality. The wise person observes patterns. Words matter, but actions reveal more. The importance of reputation. Human relationships are built on trust, and trust is built through repeated evidence. This creates one of the most valuable assets a person can possess, reputation. A good reputation creates opportunities before you even arrive. People recommend you, trust you, include you. A damaged reputation creates invisible barriers. People become cautious, they hesitate, they protect themselves. This is why reputation is like social currency. It takes years to accumulate. It can disappear quickly. Every interaction is a small investment or withdrawal. Do you keep promises? Do you accept responsibility? Do you treat people well when they cannot benefit you? These moments build the reputation that follows you. Nelson Mandela. Turning enemies into partners. One of the greatest examples of strategic understanding of people is Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years imprisoned under apartheid, Mandela had every reason to seek revenge. Many people expected anger. Instead, he chose reconciliation. This was not weakness, it was strategy. Mandela understood that destroying opponents would not automatically build a nation. South Africa needed cooperation between groups that had been divided for generations. He recognized a deeper truth. A leader must think beyond defeating enemies. They must think about what happens after victory. The strongest move is sometimes not defeating another player. It is changing the relationship between players. The difference between competition and enmity. Life contains competition. Competition can be healthy. It pushes people to improve. Athletes compete. Businesses compete, students compete, scientists compete, but competition becomes dangerous when the opponent's destruction becomes the goal. A person who defines success only by defeating others becomes trapped. Their happiness depends on someone else losing. A stronger mindset is, become better because excellence requires it, not, I must destroy others to prove my worth. The best competitors respect the game. They understand that opponents often improve them. The wrong people can destroy good players. A talented person can be damaged by poor relationships. History shows examples of people whose decisions were influenced by bad advisors, dishonest partners, uncontrolled loyalty, toxic environments. A person may have intelligence but choose the wrong circle. The wrong partner can destroy finances. The wrong friends can destroy discipline. The wrong advisors can destroy leadership. This is why relationship selection matters. The question is not only, who likes me? The better question, who makes me better? The power of alliances. Great achievements usually require cooperation. Countries form alliances. Businesses form partnerships. Researchers collaborate. Communities solve problems together. The ability to cooperate is a competitive advantage. The person who can build trust and coordinate people can achieve what one person alone cannot. This is why communication is a critical skill. A person may have a brilliant idea, but if they cannot explain it, inspire others, or build support, the idea may remain invisible. Leadership is the ability to move people toward a shared goal. The human need for belonging. Psychology shows that belonging is one of the strongest human needs. People want acceptance, connection, recognition. This desire can create strength. Communities allow people to achieve more, but it can also create danger. People may sacrifice truth to belong. They defend ideas they know are wrong because the group identity feels more important than reality. This happens in politics, companies, families, social groups. The wise player learns a difficult skill. Belong without losing yourself. Respect groups without surrendering independent thought. The final lesson of the people game. The people around you can become your greatest advantage or your greatest weakness. Choose carefully, learn from others, build alliances, keep your promises. Understand human nature, but never forget, every person is also playing their own game. They have their own fears, their own ambitions, their own interests. The mature player understands this without becoming cynical. They do not hate people because people are imperfect. They understand imperfection and build wisely despite it. Because life is not played by isolated individuals. It is played between human beings. The next challenge is understanding what makes a person valuable in this game. Because once relationships open doors, another question appears. Why do some people become highly valuable while others remain replaceable? That is the next lesson. Chapter 5. Value. The currency of the human game. Every game has something that determines advantage. In chess, it is position. In football, it is goals. In business, it is value. In life, one of the most important questions a person can answer is, what value do I bring to the world? Because the world does not reward intentions alone. It rewards contribution. A person may have good dreams, good character, good ambitions, but if they cannot create value, solve problems, or contribute something meaningful, their opportunities remain limited. This is not a statement about human worth. Every human being has inherent dignity. A person's value as a human being is not measured by income, status, or popularity. But in the competitive systems of life, careers, markets, organizations, and opportunities, usefulness matters. The world asks, what problem can you solve? What ability do you possess? What can you create? What can you improve? The player who understands value gains freedom. The player who ignores value becomes dependent on others deciding their worth. The difference between worth and market value, one of the most important distinctions in life, is understanding that human worth and market value are different things. A mother raising children may perform one of the most important roles in society, yet the market may not measure that contribution in the same way it measures a business executive. A teacher may shape thousands of lives, yet earn less than someone in entertainment. A caregiver may provide enormous emotional value, yet receive little financial reward. This reveals an important truth. The market is not a complete measure of human importance. Money measures a certain type of value. It does not measure everything valuable. However, within economic systems, certain skills receive greater rewards because they are rare, difficult, scalable, urgently needed. Understanding this distinction prevents two mistakes. The first mistake, believing money equals human worth, it does not. The second mistake, ignoring the importance of developing valuable abilities. Skills matter, contribution matters, competence matters. Why some people become valuable. Value is created when a person combines knowledge, understanding how something works, skill, the ability to apply knowledge effectively, experience, the lessons gained through repeated action, reliability, the ability to deliver consistently, judgment, knowing what matters and what does not. A person with knowledge but no execution remains theoretical. A person with skill but no judgment may create problems. A person with talent but no reliability cannot be trusted. True value comes from combining multiple qualities. The law of becoming difficult to replace. One of the strongest strategies in the game of life is becoming difficult to replace. This does not mean becoming arrogant. It means developing abilities that are uncommon and useful. The average person asks, how can I get more? The strategic person asks, how can I become more valuable? The first focuses on consumption. The second focuses on development. A person becomes valuable by increasing their ability to solve problems, create solutions, communicate ideas, lead people, understand systems, adapt to change. The world has many people seeking opportunities. Fewer people are capable of creating opportunities. The story of Lionel Messi. When talent becomes value, a powerful example is Lionel Messi. Many people describe Messi as naturally gifted, and talent was certainly part of his story. But talent alone does not explain greatness. Thousands of talented young players never reach the highest level. What separated Messi was the transformation of talent into extraordinary value. His ability to read the game, create opportunities, control the ball, make decisions under pressure created something rare. His value was not only in scoring goals, it was in changing the outcome of games. This reveals a deeper principle. Talent creates possibility. Mastery creates value. The importance of solving problems. The world rewards problem solvers. Every successful organization exists because it solves something. A hospital solves health problems. A construction company solves infrastructure problems. A technology company solves information problems. A teacher solves knowledge problems. A leader solves coordination problems. The greater the problem solved, the greater the potential value created. This is why people who develop problem-solving ability become powerful in almost every field. They become useful, and usefulness creates opportunity. Peter Drucker. The purpose of knowledge management thinker Peter Drucker argued that knowledge becomes valuable when it produces results. Information alone is not enough. The world is full of information. The advantage comes from applying knowledge effectively. A person may read hundreds of books, but if they cannot make better decisions, solve problems, or improve outcomes, the information remains unused. Knowledge must become action. The danger of being replaceable. A difficult reality of modern life is that many people compete in crowded spaces. They possess the same basic skills, the same qualifications, the same abilities, When everyone offers similar value, replacement becomes easier. This is why continuous learning matters. The person who stops developing may discover that the world has moved beyond them. Industries change, technology changes. Skills that were valuable yesterday may become ordinary tomorrow. The player who adapts survives. The player who refuses to change depends on past achievements. The compound effect of skills, one of the most powerful ideas in building value, is skill combination. A person does not always need to be the best in the world at one ability. They can become exceptional by combining several valuable abilities. For example, a person who understands engineering, data analysis, communication, leadership may create more value than someone who possesses only one technical skill. A person who understands psychology, writing, business, technology can create opportunities across multiple fields. The combination becomes rare. The lesson: do not only ask, what skill can I learn? Ask, what combination of skills would make me unusually useful? Cal Newport. The Power of Deep Work. Author Cal Newport has written about the importance of deep work. In a world full of distraction, the ability to focus deeply becomes increasingly valuable. Many people are constantly connected but rarely concentrated. They consume information continuously but produce little. Deep work creates separation. The ability to focus for extended periods allows a person to develop mastery. Great work usually requires attention, repetition, patience, improvement. The distracted person struggles to develop rare abilities. The focused person compounds advantage. Reputation as value. Skills create value, but trust determines whether people are willing to give you opportunities. A highly skilled person with a poor reputation becomes limited. People hesitate. They question reliability. They avoid risk. A person with strong reputation creates confidence. People think, this person will deliver, this person can be trusted, this person takes responsibility. Over time, trust becomes an invisible asset. This is why character and competence must develop together. Competence without character can become dangerous. Character without competence may have limited influence. The strongest players build both. The difference between employees and assets: many people think like employees. They ask, what will I receive? The valuable player also asks, what do I contribute? An employee mindset is not bad. Organizations need employees. But the highest value people think like assets. An asset produces value repeatedly. A person becomes an asset when their presence improves outcomes. They create solutions. They develop others. They improve systems. They are trusted with responsibility. This is why great organizations compete for exceptional people. They understand that valuable people multiply results. The story of Steve Jobs. Value through vision. Steve Jobs demonstrated another form of value. His greatest contribution was not only technical ability, it was the ability to combine technology, design, psychology, storytelling. He understood that products are not only objects, they are experiences. His value came from seeing connections others missed. This is another lesson. Value often comes from combining different worlds. The person who can connect ideas becomes powerful. The responsibility of developing yourself. A person's abilities are like resources. If they are not developed, they remain unused potential. A talented musician who never practices remains only talented. A gifted speaker who never studies remains limited. A creative person who never executes remains an idea generator. Potential is not achievement. Potential is a promise. Development fulfills that promise. This requires humility. The person must admit, I can improve. I do not know everything. There are skills I need. The ego wants to appear complete. Growth requires accepting incompleteness. The final rule of value: the world does not need more people trying only to appear important. It needs people who become genuinely useful. The strongest question is not, how can I prove my importance? It is, how can I increase my ability to contribute? Because value creates opportunities, independence, trust, influence. A person who becomes valuable gains options. A person who refuses growth becomes dependent on circumstances. The game of life rewards those who develop themselves enough to become valuable players. But value alone is not enough. A person can become highly skilled and still lose everything through poor decisions with money, reputation, and power. Because the next stage of the game is understanding the invisible currencies that control society: money, power, and reputation. Chapter 6: Money, Power, and Reputation. The invisible currencies of life. Every society has currencies. The obvious one is money. People use money to exchange value. It buys resources, creates opportunities, provides security. But money is not the only currency that determines outcomes. There are invisible currencies that often matter just as much. Power, reputation, trust, influence. A person who understands only money understands only one part of the game. A person who understands these invisible currencies understands how human systems actually operate. Because throughout history, people have not only competed for wealth, they have competed for control, respect, access, credibility, influence. The person who understands these forces can navigate the world more effectively. The person who ignores them may become talented but powerless. Money, the tool, not the master. Money is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. Some people worship it. They believe money is the ultimate measure of success. Others reject it completely. They believe wanting money is somehow immoral. Both views are incomplete. Money is a tool. Like a knife, it depends on how it is used. A knife can prepare food. It can also cause harm. Money can provide education, support families, fund innovation, solve problems, create independence. But money can also create greed, encourage corruption, distort priorities, become an endless pursuit. The problem is not money itself. The problem is allowing money to become the definition of everything. Morgan Housel. The Psychology of Money author Morgan Housel explains that financial success is not only about intelligence, it is about behavior. Two people can have the same income and experience completely different outcomes because they make different decisions. One person uses money to create freedom. Another uses money to create an appearance. One person understands patience. Another constantly seeks immediate pleasure. One person understands risk. Another believes success will continue forever. The financial game is not only mathematical, it is psychological. The greatest financial decisions are often connected to discipline, patience, humility, emotional control. The difference between looking rich and being wealthy. One of the biggest traps in the modern world is confusing appearance with reality. A person may display expensive clothing, luxury vehicles, impressive possessions, but visible consumption does not always represent financial strength. Sometimes it represents financial pressure. True wealth is often invisible. It appears as savings, investments, freedom of choice, reduced dependence, ability to handle emergencies. The person who owns expensive things but cannot survive without constant income may look successful while being financially fragile. The person who quietly builds assets may appear ordinary while becoming increasingly powerful. The lesson: do not confuse the scoreboard with the game. Assets and liabilities. The hidden battle. A powerful financial principle is understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset increases your future capacity. A liability consumes your future resources. Examples: an asset may create income, knowledge, skills, ownership, opportunities. A liability may create unnecessary expenses, dependency, financial pressure. This principle applies beyond money. A good relationship can be an asset. A destructive habit can be a liability. A valuable skill can be an asset. A reputation damaged by careless actions can become a liability. The question is, does this decision increase or decrease my future options? Power. The ability to influence outcomes. Money creates possibilities. Power determines influence. Power is often misunderstood as domination, but power is simply the ability to affect outcomes. A teacher has power over knowledge transfer. A parent has power over a child's development. A manager has power over opportunities. A government has power over laws and resources. A skilled professional has power because others need their expertise. Everyone possesses some form of power. The question is, how do you use it? Machiavelli. Understanding power realistically. The philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli studied power and leadership. His work is often misunderstood as simply promoting manipulation. But one of his deeper lessons was realism. He believed leaders must understand human nature as it exists, not as they wish it existed. A leader who ignores reality becomes vulnerable. A leader must understand incentives, loyalty, fear, ambition, reputation. Power without understanding becomes fragile. The danger of power without character. Power reveals character. A person with no power may appear humble because they lack the ability to behave otherwise. Give that person authority, resources, Control, then observe. Do they become generous or abusive, responsible or careless, protective or exploitative? Power does not always corrupt. Sometimes it reveals what was already hidden. A person's true character appears when consequences become weaker and opportunities become greater. Robert Greene. The Social Game of Power. Robert Greene explores how people navigate influence, strategy, and social dynamics. One of his important observations is that power exists whether people acknowledge it or not. Every organization has formal power, informal power, social influence, information advantages. A person may hold a title but lack real influence. Another person may have no title but quietly shape decisions. Understanding power means understanding reality, not only official structures. Reputation. The currency you cannot buy instantly. Money can be earned quickly. Reputation cannot. Reputation is built through repeated evidence. It answers a simple question. What do people expect from you? Will you keep your word? Will you perform? Will you act responsibly? Will you accept mistakes? A strong reputation creates opportunities before you even ask. People recommend those they trust. They collaborate with those they respect. They invest in those with credibility. The fragility of reputation. Reputation takes years to build, but it can collapse quickly. A careless decision, a dishonest action, a moment of arrogance, a betrayal. The reason reputation is powerful is because people use it as a shortcut. Nobody has time to fully investigate everyone they meet, so they rely on signals. Past behavior becomes evidence of future behavior. This is why every action communicates something. How you treat people with less power, how you respond when wrong, how you behave when nobody benefits you. These moments create your reputation. The story of Enron. When reputation collapses, one of the most famous examples of reputation failure is Enron. At one point, Enron was considered one of the most innovative and successful companies in America. Its reputation attracted investors, employees, and admiration. But behind the image were accounting practices and deception that eventually destroyed the company. The collapse was not only financial, it was a collapse of trust. Investors lost confidence. Employees lost jobs. The company's name became associated with dishonesty. The lesson: a company does not only sell products, it sells trust. When trust disappears, value disappears. The compound effect of trust works like compound interest. Small deposits create large results over time. Keeping promises, being reliable, telling the truth, taking responsibility. These small actions accumulate. The opposite is also true. Repeated dishonesty destroys trust gradually. Then suddenly, people no longer believe you. The final loss appears sudden, but the damage was built slowly. Influence, the ability to move people. The highest level of power is not forcing people, it is influencing people. A person with influence can inspire action, create cooperation, spread ideas, build movements. History's greatest leaders did not only control resources, they influenced beliefs. They created visions people wanted to follow. This is why communication is a powerful skill. A person who cannot communicate their ideas struggles to create impact. The balance between money, power, and reputation. These three currencies are connected. Money can create power. Power can create opportunities. Reputation can create both, but they can also destroy each other. A person may gain money through unethical actions, but lose reputation. A leader may gain power through fear, but lose loyalty. A company may chase profit, but destroy trust. The strongest players understand balance. They build wealth without destroying character. They use power without abusing it. They protect reputation because they understand its long-term value. The final lesson: money can open doors. Power can move doors. Reputation determines whether people trust you when you walk through them. The player who understands these currencies gains an advantage. But there is another challenge. Even a person with money, power, and reputation can fail. Why? Because every game changes. The strategy that created success yesterday may destroy success tomorrow. The player must learn the next skill: adaptation. Because in the game of life, survival belongs not to those who never change. It belongs to those who know when change is necessary. Chapter 7: Risk, Failure, and the Art of Adaptation. Daniel Kahneman. The mistakes of human thinking. Daniel Kahneman demonstrated that human beings are not always rational decision makers. We like to believe we carefully analyze every choice, but often our decisions are influenced by emotions, assumptions, fear, previous experiences, mental shortcuts. The human mind developed to make quick decisions for survival. That ability was useful in ancient environments. But in complex modern systems, quick judgments can create mistakes. A person sees someone else succeeding and thinks, they found the secret. They copy the result without understanding the conditions that created it. A person sees a rising investment and thinks, it will continue forever. They ignore the possibility of decline. A person experiences one failure and thinks, this will always happen. They allow one event to become a permanent belief. The wise player learns to question their own thinking. They ask, am I seeing reality clearly? Am I making this decision because of evidence or emotion? Am I protecting my ego or improving my position? The fear of failure, one of the strongest forces controlling human behavior, is fear. Fear can protect us. It warns us of danger. But fear can also become a prison. Many people do not fail because they made the wrong move. They fail because they never moved. They avoid starting businesses, learning new skills, expressing ideas, pursuing opportunities, leaving harmful situations. Why? Because failure feels like a judgment of identity. The person thinks, if I fail, people will see that I am not capable. But failure is not a final statement about a person. It is feedback. A scientist experiments. Most experiments fail, but each failure provides information. An inventor creates prototypes. Most prototypes do not succeed, but each attempt improves understanding. A person learning a skill makes mistakes. Those mistakes are evidence of development. The person who fears failure most often protects themselves from the very process required for improvement. The comfort zone. A beautiful prison, the comfort zone is dangerous because it does not feel dangerous. It feels safe. A person wakes up, repeats the same habits, avoids uncertainty, maintains the same environment. Nothing immediately goes wrong, but slowly capability decreases. The world changes while the person remains unchanged. A skill becomes outdated. A relationship becomes unhealthy. A career becomes limited. A dream becomes distant. Comfort becomes expensive when it prevents adaptation. The question is not, am I comfortable? The question is my comfort helping me grow or preventing me from growing? The bamboo tree lesson. There is a popular story about bamboo. A farmer plants bamboo seeds. For years, nothing visible appears above the ground. The farmer continues watering and caring for the plant. Then, after years of unseen development, the bamboo suddenly grows rapidly. The lesson often associated with this story is patience. But there is another lesson. Growth is not always visible before it becomes obvious. Many people quit during the invisible stage. They do not see immediate results. They assume nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, development may be occurring. Skills, knowledge, relationships, character, all of these often grow quietly before producing visible results. The player must learn the difference between no progress and invisible progress. When persistence becomes stubbornness, persistence is a powerful quality. Without persistence, many achievements would never happen. But persistence without wisdom becomes stubbornness. The person says, I will never quit. But sometimes quitting is the intelligent move. A farmer does not continue planting a dead crop forever. A business does not continue funding a failing product indefinitely. A person does not remain in a destructive situation simply because they already invested time. The question is not, should I continue? The better question, does continuing increase my chances of a worthwhile outcome? Persistence should serve a goal. The goal should not become an excuse for endless suffering. Sun Tzu, knowing when to fight and when to withdraw. Sun Tzu understood that victory does not always come from fighting harder. Sometimes victory comes from choosing the right battles. A skilled commander does not attack every opportunity. They consider timing, resources, position, consequences. The same applies in life. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every competitor deserves your attention. Not every opportunity deserves your commitment. A person who fights every battle eventually has no energy left for the battles that matter. Wisdom is not only knowing how to fight, it is knowing when not to fight. Building a resilient life. A resilient person is not someone who expects everything to go well. They expect challenges and prepare for them. Resilience comes from building foundations. Financial resilience, having savings and avoiding unnecessary dependence. Skill resilience, continuously learning and adapting. Relationship resilience, maintaining trustworthy connections. Emotional resilience, developing the ability to recover after difficulty. Physical resilience, protecting health and energy. A person who builds resilience is not afraid of uncertainty. They know uncertainty exists, but they are prepared to respond. The power of reinvention. Throughout history, many successful people changed direction. They were not successful because they followed one perfect path. They were successful because they adapted. A person may begin as one thing and become another. A failed entrepreneur may become a better entrepreneur. A rejected artist may develop stronger work. A person who loses a career may discover a new ability. The human advantage is not only intelligence, it is adaptability. Humans survive because they learn, they adjust, they create new solutions. The ultimate adaptation, changing yourself. The hardest thing to change is often not the environment, it is ourselves. People often want a better job, a better relationship, a better society, but they forget to ask, do I need to become a better player? The person who changes nothing internally will often recreate the same problems in new circumstances. New workplace, same behavior. New relationship, same patterns. New opportunity, same mistakes. External change without internal change creates temporary improvement. Real transformation requires both. The final lesson of risk and adaptation. The game of life does not reward the person who never encounters failure. Failure is unavoidable. The question is whether failure becomes a teacher or a destroyer. The wise player understands. Failure is information. Loss is feedback. Change is inevitable. The past is not a prison. Success is temporary. Adaptation is survival. The person who learns this becomes difficult to defeat, not because they never fall, but because every fall teaches them how to stand differently. However, even a person who understands risk, failure, and adaptation can still destroy their own progress through hidden psychological traps. The next challenge is not external. It is the invisible enemies that quietly sabotage players from within. Chapter 8: The Traps That Destroy Players. Many people believe failure comes from external enemies, a bad economy, a difficult competitor, a lack of opportunity, an unfair system. Sometimes those things are real, but throughout history, many talented people have been defeated by something closer, something they carried with them, their own weaknesses. The greatest threats are often not obvious. They do not arrive announcing themselves. They appear as comfort, pride, short-term pleasure, fear, comparison, resentment, self-deception. The player does not notice the damage immediately. The trap feels harmless. Sometimes it even feels like success. But over time, these hidden forces destroy judgment. They weaken discipline. They damage relationships. They prevent growth. The strongest players learn not only how to gain advantages, they learn how to avoid self-destruction. Because sometimes the hardest opponent to defeat is the person looking back in the mirror. Trap 1. Ego. The enemy of growth. Ego is one of the most dangerous traps because it often appears after success. Before success, people are usually willing to learn. They listen. They ask questions. They accept correction. But after achievement arrives, something changes. The person begins thinking, I know enough. I have already proven myself. I do not need advice. Success creates confidence, but unchecked confidence becomes arrogance. And arrogance creates blindness. The person stops seeing reality. They start protecting an image instead of improving themselves. The story of Muhammad Ali. The danger of overconfidence. Muhammad Ali represents both the power and danger of confidence. Ali became famous not only because of his boxing ability, but because of his extraordinary self-belief. His confidence helped him overcome opponents and redefine what an athlete could become. But even great confidence requires balance. A fighter who believes they cannot lose becomes vulnerable. The moment a person believes they have nothing left to learn is the moment decline begins. The lesson: confidence helps you enter the game. Humility helps you remain successful. Trap 2. Comparison. Playing someone else's game. One of the greatest psychological traps in modern life is comparison. Humans naturally compare. It helps us understand our position. But constant comparison can destroy satisfaction and focus. A person sees another person's success and thinks, why am I behind? They see the result. They do not see the years of preparation, the failures, the sacrifices, the hidden support, the opportunities they never witnessed. Social media has intensified this problem. People compare their complete reality with someone else's edited presentation. They compare their struggles with another person's highlights. This creates a distorted game. The person is no longer building their own life. They are constantly reacting to someone else's scoreboard. The lesson from Carl Jung. Becoming yourself. Carl Jung believed that one of the greatest psychological tasks of life is becoming an individual. He called this process individuation. It means becoming fully yourself rather than simply becoming a reflection of social expectations. Many people spend their lives trying to become what others admire. The successful person, the respected person, the wealthy person, the popular person. But the deeper question is this actually the life I want? A person can win the approval of the world and still lose connection with themselves. The game becomes dangerous when the player forgets why they started playing. Trap 3. Comfort. The slow death of potential comfort is not evil. Everyone needs rest. Everyone needs peace. But comfort becomes dangerous when it replaces growth. A person chooses the easier option repeatedly. Avoid the difficult conversation. Avoid the challenging opportunity. Avoid learning something new. Avoid confronting weaknesses. Nothing immediately breaks. That is why comfort is dangerous. The damage happens slowly. The person becomes less capable without noticing. The difference between rest and escape. Rest restores energy. Escape avoids responsibility. A person who rests returns stronger. A person who escapes returns weaker. Examples: healthy rest, taking time to recover after hard work, spending time with family, protecting mental health. Escape, endlessly distracting yourself from important decisions, avoiding necessary conversations, refusing growth because discomfort feels unpleasant. The question: am I recovering so I can continue, or hiding so I do not have to face reality? Trap 4. Immediate pleasure. The human brain naturally seeks immediate rewards. This helped our ancestors survive: food, safety, comfort, belonging. But modern life provides endless opportunities for immediate pleasure: entertainment, consumption, distraction, instant approval. The problem: the future becomes sacrificed for the present. The person chooses pleasure now, pain later, instead of discipline now, freedom later. Daniel Kahneman and Human Bias. Daniel Kahneman showed that human decision-making is influenced by predictable biases. One of these challenges is our tendency to value immediate rewards more strongly than future benefits. The present feels real. The future feels distant. A person knows saving money matters, but spending creates immediate satisfaction. A person knows studying matters, but entertainment feels easier. A person knows exercise matters, but comfort feels better today. The future self becomes someone we care about less than the current self. Wisdom requires remembering. Your future self is still you. Trap 5. Resentment. Drinking your own poison. Resentment is one of the most destructive emotional traps. A person feels, I was treated unfairly. They hurt me. They succeeded when I deserved it. Sometimes these feelings are justified. People experience real injustice, real betrayal, real harm. But resentment creates a second injury. The original event happened. Now the person continues suffering through repeated anger. They allow another person or event to occupy their mind long after the moment has passed. Resentment feels like strength because it keeps the memory alive, but often it keeps the wound open. Viktor Frankl. Freedom inside suffering. Viktor Frankl experienced unimaginable suffering during the Holocaust. He witnessed cruelty and loss. Yet he argued that even in extreme circumstances, humans retain some freedom in how they respond internally. This does not mean suffering is acceptable. It does not mean people should ignore injustice. It means hatred does not have to become the final identity of the person who was harmed. A person can seek justice without allowing hatred to destroy their own future. Trap 6. The need to be right. Many people are not searching for truth. They are searching for confirmation. Being wrong feels like losing, so they defend beliefs, decisions, relationships, identities, even when evidence changes. This is dangerous because learning requires the ability to admit, I was wrong. A person who cannot admit mistakes cannot improve. The ego protects the past. Wisdom protects the future. Trap 7. The victim identity. There is a difference between experiencing hardship and building an identity around hardship. A person can suffer. A person can be harmed. A person can experience injustice. But eventually the question becomes, what now? The victim identity says, because something happened to me, I cannot move forward. The responsible player says, this happened, it affected me. But I still have choices. Responsibility is not blaming people for their suffering. It is returning power to the person where power still exists. Trap 8. Chasing status instead of meaning. Human beings naturally seek status, respect, recognition, belonging. Throughout history, status helped people survive within groups. But the modern world has created endless status competitions. Who has the most money, the highest position, the most followers, the most impressive lifestyle? The danger. A person may spend their entire life trying to impress people they do not even respect. Status is external, meaning is internal. Status asks, how do others see me? Meaning asks, what contribution am I making? Nietzsche. Creating your own values. Friedrich Nietzsche challenged people to examine inherited values. He questioned whether people were truly choosing their lives or simply following social expectations. His philosophy emphasized self-overcoming. The person must continually develop beyond their current limitations. The goal is not becoming better than everyone else. The goal is overcoming yesterday's version of yourself. Trap 9. Ignoring reality. Perhaps the most dangerous trap is refusing to see reality. People ignore financial problems, health problems, relationship problems, changing environments. They hope the problem disappears. Usually ignored problems grow. The wise player faces reality early. A small problem is easier to solve than a large crisis. Truth may hurt immediately, but deception creates larger pain later. The final lesson of the traps. The greatest players are not those who never experience weakness. Everyone has weaknesses. The difference is awareness. The dangerous person says, I do not have these problems. The wise person says, I have weaknesses. I must understand them. Self-awareness is protection, because every strength contains a possible weakness. Confidence can become arrogance. Discipline can become rigidity. Loyalty can become blindness. Ambition can become obsession. Generosity can become self-neglect. Every quality requires balance. The player must constantly ask, is this helping me play better, or is it controlling me? Because the biggest losses in life are often not caused by external enemies. They are caused by internal patterns left unexamined. But avoiding traps is only part of the game. A player must also know when to move forward, when to stay patient, and when to walk away. Because one of the greatest skills in life is not only knowing how to fight, it is knowing when a battle is no longer worth fighting. Chapter 9. The courage to move, risk, patience, and knowing. To exit. One of the hardest lessons in the game of life is understanding movement. Some people move too quickly. They chase every opportunity, follow every trend, make decisions based on emotion. They mistake activity for progress. Others move too slowly. They wait forever for perfect conditions. They analyze endlessly. They fear making the wrong choice. They become trapped by hesitation. The wise player understands that life requires both courage and patience. Sometimes the correct move is to advance. Sometimes the correct move is to wait. Sometimes the most intelligent move is to leave. The challenge is knowing the difference. The illusion of the perfect decision. Many people delay action because they want certainty. They want the perfect opportunity, the perfect timing, complete information, zero risk. But life rarely provides these conditions. Every major decision contains uncertainty. Choosing a career, starting a business, moving to a new place, building a relationship, investing time into a skill. You rarely know everything before you begin. The player who waits for certainty often discovers that the opportunity has passed. The world rewards those who can make reasonable decisions with incomplete information, not reckless decisions, not careless decisions, calculated decisions. The difference between courage and recklessness. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite fear. A courageous person understands the risk, but believes the potential reward justifies it. Recklessness ignores consequences. A reckless person says, I do not care what happens. A courageous person says, I understand what can happen, and I am prepared to accept the consequences. This distinction separates great decisions from emotional gambling. The importance of position before making a move. A skilled player studies their position. In chess, a weak position requires a different strategy from a strong position. The same applies in life. A person with savings can take different risks from someone with no financial safety. A person with valuable skills has different options from someone with no developed abilities. A person with strong relationships has different opportunities from someone isolated. This is why preparation matters. Preparation does not eliminate uncertainty. It improves your position before uncertainty arrives. Sun Tzu. The art of choosing battles. The ancient strategist Sun Tzu understood that victory often depends on choosing the right conditions. A commander who attacks without considering timing, terrain, resources, the opponent, creates unnecessary losses. The same principle applies to personal decisions. Not every opportunity is an opportunity. Not every challenge deserves acceptance. Not every enemy deserves engagement. A person who tries to win every battle eventually loses energy for the battles that matter. Wisdom is not only knowing how to fight, it is knowing what deserves a fight. The cost of staying too long. One of the most difficult decisions is knowing when to leave. Humans naturally become attached to what they have invested in. Time, money, emotion, identity. A person thinks, I have already spent 10 years here. I cannot leave now. I have invested too much. But past investment does not always justify future commitment. This is the sunk cost fallacy. The question should not be, how much have I already invested? The question should be, given the current reality, is continuing still the best decision? Examples of sunk costs. A business owner continues losing money because they cannot accept the idea of closing. A person remains in a harmful relationship because they invested years. A professional stays in a declining career because they fear starting again. A student continues a path they hate because they already spent years studying. The emotional attachment is understandable, but the future should not be sacrificed to protect the past. A previous decision does not own your future. The courage to begin again, starting over, is one of the most difficult experiences in life. The ego fears it. People think, what will others think? Will people see me as a failure? Did all my previous effort become meaningless? But starting again does not erase previous experience. Every chapter teaches something. Every failure leaves knowledge. Every challenge develops capacity. A person who starts again is not returning to zero. They are beginning from experience. Steve Jobs. The power of reinvention. The story of Steve Jobs demonstrates this principle. Being removed from Apple could have destroyed his identity. The company he helped create had become part of his personal story, but instead of remaining trapped in humiliation, he used the period to develop. He created new experiences, built new companies, learned new perspectives. When he returned to Apple, he was not the same person who had left. The failure became part of his transformation. The lesson. Sometimes losing a position creates the opportunity to become a better player. Patience, the forgotten skill. Modern culture celebrates speed, fast success, instant results, quick wealth, immediate recognition. But many important things require time, trust, mastery, relationships, reputation, expertise. A person who demands immediate results may abandon valuable paths too early. A tree does not grow by being pulled upward. Growth requires time. The difference between patience and passivity. Patience is active. It means continuing the necessary work while allowing time to produce results. Passivity is avoidance. It means doing nothing while hoping circumstances improve. A farmer who plants seeds and maintains the field is patient. A farmer who plants nothing and waits for harvest is not patient. A person developing a skill and practicing daily is patient. A person avoiding action while waiting for confidence is not. The role of timing. Many opportunities depend on timing. A good decision at the wrong time may fail. A great idea introduced before society is ready may struggle. A person may have talent but enter the wrong environment. This is why humility matters. Not every failure means the idea was wrong. Sometimes the timing was wrong. Sometimes the strategy was wrong. Sometimes the preparation was incomplete. Wisdom requires understanding which one occurred. The courage to change direction. Adaptation requires the willingness to change direction. This is difficult because people connect decisions with identity. They think, if I change my mind, I am admitting weakness. But changing after receiving new information is not weakness. It is intelligence. A pilot constantly adjusts direction because conditions change. A captain adjusts course because the environment changes. A successful person does the same. The goal is not loyalty to a previous decision. The goal is reaching the right destination. The danger of endless searching. While some people move too quickly, others become trapped searching for the perfect answer. They read endlessly, study endlessly, plan endlessly, but never act. Knowledge becomes another form of avoidance. The person feels productive because they are learning, but learning without application creates no transformation. At some point, The research must become action, the plan must become execution, the idea must become reality. A player cannot win a game they never enter. The exit strategy: a wise player thinks about exit before entering. This applies to investments, businesses, careers, partnerships. The question is not only how can this succeed, also ask what would make me leave. This prevents emotional decisions later. A person who knows their limits is harder to trap. The final lesson: movement requires wisdom. The game of life requires movement. But movement alone is not progress. A person can run in the wrong direction. The goal is not constant action. The goal is meaningful action. Move when opportunity appears. Wait when patience is required. Leave when the game no longer serves the future. The wise player understands some doors must be opened. Some doors must remain closed. Some battles must be fought. Some battles must be avoided. Some chapters must continue. Some chapters must end. Because winning the game of life is not about staying in every game you enter. It is about knowing which games deserve your life. But even after learning strategy, risk, and decision-making, there is a bigger question. What happens when the game itself is shaped by forces larger than the individual? Because people do not play life in isolation, they play inside systems, economies, cultures, institutions, societies. And those systems can either create opportunity or create obstacles. The next chapter explores the invisible structures that shape human behavior. Chapter 10, The Systems Around You. How invisible forces shape the game. A person can understand themselves. They can develop discipline. They can build valuable skills. They can make intelligent decisions, yet they may still struggle. Why? Because human beings do not play life in isolation. They play inside systems. Systems that influence what opportunities exist, what behaviors are rewarded, what decisions become possible, what outcomes become likely. A person is not only shaped by personal choices, they are also shaped by the environment surrounding those choices. Understanding this is one of the deepest levels of the game, because many people look only at individuals. They ask, why did this person succeed? Why did this person fail? But sometimes the more important question is, what system created these conditions? The individual and the environment. Imagine two seeds. One is planted in fertile soil with water, sunlight, and protection. Another is planted in dry ground with poor conditions. Both seeds contain potential, but the environment affects what becomes possible. Human beings are similar. Potential matters, effort matters, character matters, but environment matters too. A child growing up surrounded by books, education, and encouragement begins with different resources from a child growing up surrounded by instability and limited opportunity. This does not mean the environment determines everything. History is full of people who overcame difficult conditions, but ignoring environmental influence creates an incomplete understanding of life. A wise player studies both the player and the board. Systems create incentives. One of the most important rules in human behavior is people respond to incentives. An incentive is anything that encourages a certain behavior. People do more of what is rewarded. They do less of what is punished. This principle operates everywhere. A company that rewards only short-term profit may encourage short-term decisions. A school that rewards memorization may produce students who memorize rather than understand. A society that rewards attention may create people who compete for visibility rather than truth. A workplace that rewards honesty creates different behavior from one that rewards manipulation. To understand a system, do not only listen to what it says, observe what it rewards. Adam Smith and the Power of Invisible Forces. The economist and philosopher Adam Smith explored how individual actions can combine to create larger economic outcomes. His ideas helped shape modern economics. One of his important insights was that incentives influence human behavior. People often pursue their own interests, but their actions interact with wider systems. This does not mean every outcome is automatically good. Markets, institutions, and societies require rules and ethics. The deeper lesson: individual choices do not happen in empty space. They happen inside structures that influence behavior. The game of institutions. Institutions are among the strongest forces shaping human life. Examples include governments, schools, companies, financial systems, legal systems, families. Institutions create rules. Rules create incentives. Incentives create behavior. A strong institution can transform ordinary people into effective contributors. A weak institution can create frustration. corruption, and inefficiency. This is why societies with similar resources can produce very different outcomes. The difference is often not only the people, it is the systems they operate within. The tragedy of the commons. One of the most famous examples of system problems is the tragedy of the commons. Imagine a shared field where many farmers allow their animals to graze. Each individual farmer has an incentive to add more animals. For one farmer, adding another animal creates personal benefit. But if everyone does the same, the shared field becomes destroyed. The individual decision makes sense. The collective result becomes harmful. This reveals a major lesson. What benefits one person in isolation may damage everyone when repeated by many people. This principle appears in environmental problems, financial systems, public resources, corruption. The challenge of civilization is creating systems where individual incentives align with collective well-being. Elinor Ostrom, cooperation can work. For many years, some thinkers believed shared resources would inevitably fail. But political scientist Elinor Ostrom showed that communities can successfully manage shared resources when they create effective rules. Her research challenged the idea that people are always selfish and cooperation is impossible. Communities can create systems based on trust, accountability, local knowledge, shared responsibility. The lesson: human beings are not only competitors, they are also capable of cooperation. The design of the system influences which behavior appears. Why good people sometimes make bad decisions. One of the most important lessons of systems thinking is understanding that behavior is often shaped by incentives. A person inside a broken system may make choices that appear irrational from the outside. For example, an employee in a company that rewards dishonesty may face pressure to compromise. A politician inside a corrupt system may face incentives that encourage corruption. A student in an education system focused only on grades may focus on grades rather than learning. This does not remove personal responsibility. People still make choices, but understanding systems helps explain why certain behaviors repeat. The power of culture. Culture is one of the strongest invisible systems. Culture teaches what is normal, what is respected, what is shameful, what is desirable. A person may not even realize how much culture influences them. The way people view success, family, money, work, relationships, authority is shaped by cultural messages. Culture can preserve wisdom. It can also preserve harmful traditions. The wise player asks, which beliefs strengthen life? Which beliefs limit growth? Not everything inherited should automatically be continued. The business game. Companies are systems. A company is not just a collection of people. It is a system. Its structure determines decision-making, communication, incentives, innovation. A company with talented employees can fail because the system prevents good decisions. A company with average employees can succeed because the system supports effectiveness. This is why great leaders focus not only on hiring good people, they build good systems. Toyota. The power of continuous improvement. A famous example is Toyota Motor Corporation. Toyota became known for its approach to continuous improvement. The philosophy focused on reducing waste, improving processes, learning from mistakes, empowering workers to identify problems. The lesson: great performance does not come only from individual brilliance. It comes from systems that allow improvement. The danger of blaming only individuals. A common mistake in society is explaining every problem through individual failure. If people worked harder, everything would be solved. Sometimes effort matters, but sometimes the system itself creates barriers. A person may need more education. A community may need better infrastructure. An organization may need better leadership. A country may need stronger institutions. A complete analysis asks both questions. What responsibility belongs to the individual? What responsibility belongs to the system? Ignoring either creates bad solutions. The player must understand multiple games. Every person participates in multiple games at once. You are playing the personal game, your habits, your choices, your character. The social game, relationships, trust, reputation. The economic game, skills, money, opportunities. The institutional game, rules, systems, structures. A person may succeed in one game and fail in another. A wealthy person may have poor relationships. A respected professional may have poor health. A powerful leader may lack wisdom. The goal is not winning one game while destroying the others. The goal is balance. Changing the system. Some players do not only adapt to systems, they change them. Great leaders, inventors, and reformers often recognized that the existing rules were producing poor outcomes. They asked, why does this system work this way? Can it be improved? Progress happens when people challenge outdated systems, scientific discoveries, social reforms, technological innovations, better organizations. All begin with someone questioning the current design. The final lesson of systems. A wise player understands two truths at the same time. You are responsible for your choices, and you are influenced by forces larger than yourself. The immature player says, everything is my fault, or nothing is my responsibility. Both are incomplete. The mature player says, I understand the forces around me, and I must still make the best moves available. Because life is not played on an empty board. The board itself has rules. The player who understands the board has an advantage. But even the best understanding of systems cannot remove one unavoidable reality. Sometimes the game becomes unfair. Sometimes circumstances change beyond your control. Sometimes good players suffer. The next chapter explores the hardest question every human being eventually faces. How do you play well when the game is not fair? Chapter 11, when the game becomes unfair. Facing reality without losing yourself. One of the hardest truths about life is that the game is not always fair. Some people work hard and still struggle. Some people make good decisions and still experience loss. Some people are born into opportunities others spend their entire lives trying to find. Some people suffer consequences they did not create. This reality creates one of the deepest human questions. How should a person respond when life gives them a difficult position? Because unfairness creates a dangerous choice. A person can become bitter, or they can become wiser. A person can allow suffering to destroy them, or they can allow suffering to transform them. The event itself does not completely determine the outcome. The response becomes part of the story. The human desire for a fair world. Human beings naturally expect fairness. Children learn early. If I do something good, I should receive something good. If I do something wrong, I should face consequences. This belief helps create order. Societies depend on justice. Families depend on trust. Communities depend on fairness. But reality does not always follow this pattern. Good people sometimes suffer. Bad people sometimes succeed. Honest people sometimes lose. Dishonest people sometimes gain. This creates a painful conflict between our expectations and reality. The mistake is not believing fairness matters. Fairness does matter. The mistake is believing life automatically guarantees it. The difference between justice and reality. A mature person understands two separate ideas. The world should strive for justice, but individuals must also understand reality. If someone is harmed, society should seek accountability. If institutions are unfair, people should work to improve them. If corruption exists, it should be challenged. But on a personal level, a person must still decide, what can I do from here? Because waiting for the world to become perfectly fair before moving forward means surrendering your life to circumstances. Viktor Frankl, meaning inside suffering. Few people understood this better than Viktor Frankl. During the Holocaust, Frankl experienced one of the darkest periods in human history. He lost freedom. He suffered hunger. He witnessed cruelty and death. Yet from this extreme experience, he developed one of the most powerful ideas in psychology. Even when people cannot control their circumstances, they may still have some freedom in how they respond. Frankl did not argue that suffering was good. He did not glorify pain. His message was that suffering does not have to remove meaning. A person can still choose dignity, courage, compassion, responsibility. The external world may take many things, but the inner response remains a place of choice. The danger of bitterness. When people experience unfairness, bitterness can feel natural. Someone thinks, why should I try when the world does not reward effort? Why should I be good when others take advantage? Why should I trust when I have been betrayed? These questions come from real pain, but bitterness creates a second loss. The original injustice happens, then the person allows that injustice to reshape their entire character. They become controlled by what hurt them. A person who was betrayed may become unable to trust anyone. A person who was rejected may spend their life seeking revenge. A person who experienced failure may refuse every future opportunity. The wound becomes the identity. The Stoic response: control your response. The Stoic philosophers focused heavily on this challenge. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, political struggles, illness, and personal losses. Yet he repeatedly returned to one principle. Your power begins with your response. You cannot control every event, but you can control the quality of your response. This does not mean accepting injustice. The Stoics were not teaching passivity. They were teaching discipline. Do what belongs to you. Release what does not. The story of Nelson Mandela. Refusing to become the enemy. The life of Nelson Mandela demonstrates this principle. Mandela suffered under a system designed to deny millions of people dignity and opportunity. After years of imprisonment, he had every reason to allow hatred to define him. But he understood something strategic. A person who allows hatred to control them remains psychologically imprisoned. Freedom required more than leaving prison walls. It required freedom from becoming controlled by anger. Mandela's forgiveness was not forgetting. It was not saying injustice did not matter. It was choosing a response that served a larger future. When the game is unequal, sometimes people begin life with disadvantages: poverty, limited education, poor health, unstable environments, discrimination, lack of access. These realities matter. Ignoring them creates unfair judgment. A person cannot simply tell everyone, just work harder, because people do not begin with identical resources. But another mistake is believing disadvantage removes all agency. History contains countless examples of people who started with severe limitations and created meaningful lives. The lesson: a difficult position requires different strategy. A player with fewer resources cannot always copy the moves of someone with more resources. They must understand their own board. The advantage of adaptability. When circumstances are difficult, adaptability becomes more important. A person with limited resources may need to develop rare skills, create relationships, learn continuously, find alternative paths. The question changes. Not why can I not play the same game as them, but what game can I win from my position? Different people have different advantages. One person may have money, another may have creativity. One may have connections, another may have determination. The wise player identifies available strengths. The unfairness of luck. One of the most uncomfortable realities is the role of luck. Success is influenced by timing, birthplace, opportunities, unexpected events people encountered. This does not mean effort is meaningless. Effort remains one of the most important factors. But pretending success is only personal ability creates arrogance. The successful person should remember, some things I achieved, some things I received. This creates humility. Nassim Taleb. Luck and Hidden Variables. Nassim Nicholas Taleb often discusses the role of randomness in outcomes. People frequently underestimate luck when things go well. They believe, I succeeded because I was completely right. But sometimes, timing helped, conditions helped, unexpected events helped. Recognizing luck does not reduce achievement. It improves judgment. A wise player asks how much came from skill, how much came from favorable circumstances. This prevents arrogance during success and despair during failure. The danger of envy. When life appears unfair, comparison becomes dangerous. A person sees someone else winning and thinks, they do not deserve it. Sometimes that may be true, sometimes it is not. But constant envy damages the person experiencing it. It takes attention away from their own game. The other person's position becomes the center of their life. A person cannot build their future while permanently watching someone else's scoreboard. Transforming pain into wisdom. Pain alone does not create wisdom. Many people suffer and become bitter. Wisdom comes when suffering is examined. The person asks, what did this teach me? What strength did this develop? What mistake should I avoid repeating? How can this experience help someone else? Pain can become knowledge, empathy, resilience, maturity, but only if the person chooses reflection. The final lesson: play your position. The game of life will sometimes place you in difficult positions. The question is not whether difficulty exists. The question is whether difficulty controls the entire story. A great player does not waste their entire life wishing for a different opening position. They study the board. They recognize limitations. They identify possibilities. They make the next move. Because complaining about the position does not change the position. Understanding it does. The goal is not pretending life is fair. The goal is becoming strong enough, wise enough, and adaptable enough to continue playing even when it is not. But there is an even harder lesson waiting. Sometimes a person can make wise decisions, Play with discipline, act with integrity, and still lose. Sometimes the outcome is painful despite doing everything correctly. That leads to the next question. What happens when you play well and still lose? Chapter 12, When You Play Well and Still Lose, Luck, Suffering, and the Limits of Control. One of the most painful lessons in the game of life is this. A good move does not always guarantee a good outcome. A person can prepare carefully, make ethical decisions, work hard, treat people well, and still experience failure. A business can collapse despite intelligent leadership. A relationship can end despite genuine love. A talented person can be overlooked despite dedication. A good person can suffer despite doing the right thing. This reality challenges one of our deepest assumptions. If I do everything correctly, everything should work out. But life is not a perfectly controlled machine. It is a complex system involving human choices, randomness, timing, circumstances, forces beyond individual control. The mature player must learn a difficult balance. Take responsibility for your actions, but do not believe you control everything. The difference between decision quality and outcome. One of the greatest mistakes people make is judging decisions only by results. A person succeeds. That was a brilliant decision. A person fails. That was a terrible decision. But this is not always true. Sometimes a good decision produces a bad result. Sometimes a bad decision produces a good result. This happens because outcomes contain uncertainty. A gambler may win once through luck. A skilled investor may lose money because of unexpected events. A careful driver may still experience an accident caused by another person. The outcome alone does not reveal the quality of the decision. Annie Duke, Thinking in Bets, former professional poker player and decision expert Annie Duke, has written about this idea through the concept of thinking in bets. Life decisions are similar to poker. A skilled poker player does not know every card. They make decisions based on probabilities and available information. They can make the correct decision and still lose the hand. But over many hands, good decisions improve the chances of success. Life works similarly. The goal is not certainty. The goal is increasing the probability of favorable outcomes. The problem with hindsight after events happen, humans often believe they were predictable. This is called hindsight bias. A company collapses. Everyone should have seen it coming. A person succeeds. It was obvious they would succeed. But before the outcome, uncertainty existed. The human mind creates simple stories after complexity has already unfolded. This creates two dangers. During success, a person becomes arrogant. They believe their skill alone created everything. During failure, a person becomes hopeless. They believe their mistake explains everything. Both are inaccurate. Reality usually contains many variables. The story of Abraham Lincoln, failure before greatness. A powerful example of resilience is Abraham Lincoln. Before becoming president, Lincoln experienced repeated setbacks, business failures, political defeats, personal struggles. Many moments could have convinced him to abandon public life, but he continued learning, adapting, and moving forward. His story does not prove that persistence guarantees success. Many persistent people still fail. The deeper lesson is, a difficult chapter does not necessarily define the entire story. The pain of unexplained suffering. One of the hardest experiences humans face is suffering without explanation. If a person makes a mistake and suffers, they can learn. But what about suffering that seems undeserved? Illness, loss, accidents, betrayal, natural disasters. The human mind searches for reasons. We ask, why did this happen? Why me? What did I do wrong? Sometimes there is an answer, sometimes there is not. And learning to live with unanswered questions is part of maturity. The Book of Job. The problem of suffering. One of the oldest discussions of suffering appears in the story of Job. Job is portrayed as a righteous man who experiences extreme loss. His friends attempt to explain his suffering by saying he must have done something wrong. But the story challenges this simple explanation. Suffering is not always proof of personal failure. Bad outcomes do not always mean bad decisions. This is one of the most important lessons in life. Do not judge every person's suffering as someone who deserved it. And do not judge yourself that way either. Frankl. Meaning beyond circumstances. The life and work of Viktor Frankl return again here because his insight applies directly. Frankl argued that meaning can exist even when circumstances cannot be changed. This does not mean pretending suffering is pleasant. It means refusing to allow suffering to remove all purpose. A person facing hardship can still ask, what kind of person will I become through this? What values do I want to protect? What can I still contribute? The event may not be chosen. The response still matters. The danger of the victim and the danger of false responsibility. When people suffer, they often fall into one of two extremes. Extreme 1, total victimhood. I have no power. Nothing I do matters. The world decides everything. This removes responsibility. Extreme 2, total self-blame. Everything is my fault. If I had done everything perfectly, nothing bad would happen. This creates unnecessary guilt. The mature position is between them. Some things are caused by your choices. Some things are caused by other people's choices. Some things are caused by chance. Wisdom requires knowing the difference. The Stoic lesson. The final control. The Stoics understood that external success is never guaranteed. Even the strongest person can lose. Even the wise person can suffer. So they focused on something deeper. Character. A person may lose wealth, but can they remain honest? A person may lose status, but can they remain dignified? A person may lose comfort, but can they remain courageous? The external game can change. The internal game remains. The importance of gratitude during uncertainty. Gratitude is often misunderstood as ignoring problems. It is not. A person can acknowledge suffering and still recognize what remains. A person can experience loss and still appreciate love. A person can face difficulty and still notice opportunities. Gratitude protects against the mind's tendency to focus only on what is missing. It reminds the player, I have lost something, but I still have something. The final score is not only the result. Many people define winning only by external outcomes, money, recognition, position, achievements. But a life cannot be judged only by visible results. Two people may both fail financially. One becomes bitter and destroys relationships. The other becomes wiser, rebuilds, and helps others. The external result is similar. The internal outcome is different. The person you become through the game matters. Accepting mortality. The hardest limit of control is death. Every player eventually leaves the game. No amount of wealth prevents it. No amount of status defeats it. No achievement creates immortality. This reality can create fear, or it can create clarity. Knowing time is limited changes priorities. A person asks, am I spending my life on what truly matters? Am I wasting years seeking approval? Am I postponing the things that give life meaning? Death is not only an ending, it is a reminder. A limited game becomes more valuable because time is limited. The final lesson of Chapter 12. The wise player understands you are responsible for your moves, but you are not the author of every event. You control your preparation, not every outcome. You control your effort, not every reward. You control your character, not every circumstance. This understanding creates humility during success and resilience during failure, because the goal of life is not to guarantee victory. No one can. The goal is to play with such wisdom that, even when the result is uncertain, your actions remain worthy. And eventually, every player must face the final question. After all the strategies, achievements, failures, and lessons, what does it mean to have played well? That is where the final chapter begins. Chapter 13, Becoming the Player. The final move in the game of life, after learning the rules, after understanding value, after mastering yourself, after studying people, after building skills, after facing uncertainty, after surviving failure. One final question remains. What kind of player do you want to become? Because the deepest lesson of the game of life is that success is not only about what you achieve, it is about who you become while pursuing it. A person can win external battles and lose the internal one. They can gain wealth but lose peace, gain influence but lose integrity, gain recognition but lose themselves. The final victory is not simply standing above others. It is reaching the end of the game without losing the qualities that made the journey meaningful. The difference between winning and playing well. Many people define winning as reaching a destination, a certain income, a certain position, a certain level of recognition. But life is more complicated than a scoreboard. Two people can achieve the same result and have completely different lives. One person gains wealth and becomes generous. Another gains wealth and becomes controlled by fear. One person gains power and protects others. Another gains power and abuses it. One person becomes successful and remains humble. Another becomes successful and loses their humanity. The achievement alone does not tell the whole story. The question is, what did success transform you into? The player must understand the final game. Throughout history, humans have searched for the meaning of life. Different civilizations have offered different answers. Religious traditions speak about purpose beyond material existence. Philosophers speak about virtue and wisdom. Psychologists speak about meaning and self-actualization. But many of these traditions share one idea. A good life, not simply a life of possession, it is a life of alignment. Alignment between values and actions, beliefs and behavior, abilities and contribution, freedom and responsibility. The person becomes whole when the different parts of life move in the same direction. Aristotle. The good life is built through character. The philosopher Aristotle believed that the purpose of human life was not merely pleasure or wealth. He described the highest human good as eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing. Flourishing does not mean constant happiness. It means living in accordance with excellence of character. A good person is not created by one heroic action. They are created by repeated choices. A single honest moment does not create an honest person. A pattern of honesty does. A single courageous act does not create courage. Repeated action in the presence of fear creates courage. Character is built move by move. The person you become is the real outcome. Many people focus only on external results, but every decision is also shaping identity. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you become more disciplined. Every time you choose honesty over convenience, you become more honest. Every time you choose courage over fear, you become more courageous. The actions are not only producing outcomes, they are producing the person who will face future challenges. This is why small choices matter. A person's future is not created only by major decisions, it is created by repeated daily decisions. The mastery of self. The person who masters themselves gains the greatest freedom. This does not mean controlling every emotion. It means not being controlled by every emotion. A person can feel anger without becoming destructive, feel fear without becoming paralyzed, feel temptation without becoming a slave to it, feel sadness without losing all hope. Self-mastery creates space between impulse and action. That space is where wisdom lives. Carl Jung. Becoming whole. Carl Jung believed that human development involves becoming whole. The person must integrate different parts of themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses, their conscious identity, their hidden fears, their ambitions, their limitations. A person who rejects parts of themselves remains divided. They spend energy pretending, but a person who understands themselves gains freedom. They know, this is my strength, this is my weakness, this is what I need to improve, this is what I must accept. Self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom. Viktor Frankl. Meaning beyond achievement. Modern society often teaches people to chase achievement. But achievement alone cannot answer the deepest human questions. A person can reach the top and still ask, is this all? Viktor Frankl argued that humans need meaning. Meaning can come through creation, the things we contribute, the work we do, the problems we solve, love, the relationships we build, the people we care for. Attitude, the way we respond to unavoidable suffering. Meaning transforms difficulty. It gives a person a reason to continue. The importance of service. A life focused only on the self eventually becomes empty. Human beings are designed for contribution. The question, how can I gain, must eventually become, how can I contribute? The greatest achievements often solve problems beyond the individual. A scientist contributes knowledge. A builder creates structures. A teacher develops minds. A parent shapes generations. A leader creates direction. A friend provides support. A person's legacy is often measured by what becomes better because they existed. The illusion of control. One of the final lessons of the game is humility. You can influence life. You cannot completely control life. You can prepare. You cannot guarantee outcomes. You can love. You cannot guarantee that you will never be hurt. You can build. You cannot guarantee that everything will remain forever. The mature player understands this. They act with commitment while accepting uncertainty. They give their best without demanding absolute control. The final balance. Strength and compassion. A complete player develops both strength and compassion. Strength without compassion becomes cruelty. Compassion without strength becomes weakness. The world requires people who can defend what matters, protect the vulnerable, set boundaries, forgive wisely, pursue excellence, remain human. The goal is not becoming untouchable. The goal is becoming capable. Legacy, what remains after the game. Every player eventually leaves the board. The possessions remain behind. The titles disappear. The applause fades. But influence continues. A person remains through. The people they helped, the knowledge they shared, the kindness they showed, the systems they improved, the values they passed forward. A meaningful life is not measured only by how high someone climbed. It is measured by what became better because they climbed. The final move. The greatest mistake is believing life is only about winning. Winning against competitors, winning against enemies, winning against circumstances. But the deepest victory is different. It is becoming someone who can face life honestly. Someone who can succeed without arrogance, fail without destruction, lose without hatred, gain without forgetting gratitude, change without losing identity. The final move is not controlling the game. Nobody controls everything. The final move is becoming the kind of player who can face any position. A player with a disciplined mind, a courageous heart, a humble spirit, a useful purpose, and the wisdom to know what truly matters. Because at the end of the game, the question will not only be, how much did you win? The deeper question will be, how well did you play? And perhaps the greatest achievement is this, to leave the game knowing that you did not waste the opportunity to be fully alive. Epilogue, the final move, becoming fully alive. Every person enters the game of life with a different opening position. Some begin with advantages they did not earn. Some begin with obstacles they did not create. Some receive guidance early. Some spend years searching for direction. Some are given opportunities. Some must create opportunities where none seem to exist. But eventually, every player faces the same reality. The board is temporary. The time is limited. The moves matter. The question is not whether you received the perfect position. Nobody did. The question is, what did you do with the position you were given? The game was never about controlling everything. One of humanity's greatest illusions is the belief that we can control everything. We plan, we prepare, we calculate, we predict. And these things matter. A wise person does not live carelessly. But eventually every player discovers a truth. Life is not a machine. It is a changing environment filled with uncertainty. People change, conditions change, opportunities appear and disappear, plans succeed and fail, the unexpected arrives. The mature player does not collapse because reality refuses to follow the plan. They adapt, they learn, they continue. The beginning does not define the ending. Your beginning matters, your environment matters, your history matters, but they are not the entire story. A person can inherit limitations and still develop strength. A person can experience failure and still rebuild. A person can lose opportunities and still create new ones. A person can begin with weakness and become powerful through discipline. The past explains where you started. It does not have to decide where you finish. The greatest players in history were not always those with the best opening position. They were those who understood their position better than anyone else. The invisible victories. Many of life's greatest victories are invisible. Nobody sees the moment you choose discipline over temptation. Nobody sees the moment you forgive instead of seeking revenge. Nobody sees the moment you tell the truth when lying would be easier. Nobody sees the hours spent learning. Nobody sees the battles fought inside your own mind. But these invisible moments create the person who eventually appears publicly. Character is built privately before it is recognized publicly. The world sees the result. It rarely sees the process. The final lesson from the Stoic philosophers understood that life would always contain things beyond human control. Loss, pain, change, death. They did not teach people to become emotionless. They taught people to become grounded, to separate what belongs to me and what does not. Your responsibility, your actions, your choices. Your effort, your character, your response, outside your complete control, other people's decisions, the past, every outcome, every circumstance. Wisdom comes from knowing the difference. The final lesson from Carl Jung. Carl Jung taught that the person must confront themselves, because the greatest prison is not always outside. Sometimes it is inside. The fears we refuse to face, the weaknesses we refuse to admit, the patterns we repeat without understanding. The identity we inherited without questioning. A person who never examines themselves becomes controlled by unseen forces. A person who understands themselves gains freedom. The journey of life is not only about changing the world, it is also about discovering who you truly are. The final lesson from Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl showed that even when circumstances become extremely difficult, humans still search for meaning. Meaning does not remove suffering, but it gives suffering a place within a larger story. A person who knows why they continue can endure challenges that would destroy someone without purpose. This is why meaning matters. Without meaning, success can feel empty. With meaning, even difficulty can become part of growth. The final lesson from Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu understood that victory comes from understanding reality, not from emotion, not from ego, not from blind aggression. The wise player studies the environment, the opponent, the timing, the resources, the consequences. The same applies to life. Do not fight every battle. Do not chase every opportunity. Do not waste your energy proving yourself to everyone. Choose your battles carefully. Your attention is one of your greatest resources. Spend it wisely. The final lesson from Aristotle. Aristotle believed that a good life is built through virtue, not through one great achievement, through repeated actions. A person becomes courageous by practicing courage. A person becomes wise by practicing reflection. A person becomes trustworthy by practicing honesty. A person becomes excellent by repeatedly pursuing excellence. Who you become is created through what you repeatedly do. The final scoreboard at the end of life. Many things that seemed important become smaller. The titles, the possessions, the comparisons, the approval of strangers. What remains are deeper questions. Did you love well? Did you contribute? Did you grow? Did you use your abilities? Did you treat people with dignity? Did you become wiser? Did your existence make something better? This is the scoreboard that cannot be measured by money. Do not forget to play. There is one final danger. A person can become so focused on winning that they forget to live. They optimize everything. Every relationship becomes a transaction. Every activity becomes a strategy. Every moment becomes a step toward some future goal. But life is not only a competition, it is also an experience, a conversation, a friendship, a sunrise, a song, a moment with someone you love, a quiet moment of gratitude. Some things are valuable because they are experienced, not because they produce something. The wise player knows when to compete and when to simply appreciate being alive. The final move. The game began before you understood the rules. You inherited a position. You learned the board. You faced opponents. You developed skills. You experienced victories. You experienced losses. You adapted. You changed. And now you understand the deepest lesson. The goal was never to control everything. The goal was never to defeat everyone. The goal was never simply to accumulate more. The goal was to become a person capable of playing the game with wisdom, with courage, with discipline, with compassion, with humility. Because the greatest victory in the game of life is not standing above everyone else. It is reaching the end and knowing you used your abilities. You honored your values. You helped where you could. You learned from where you failed. You loved despite the risks. You continued despite uncertainty. You played your position as well as you could. And when the final move arrives, you can leave the board knowing you did not merely exist. You were fully alive.